I think a big part of what you're teaching them is to weigh the future more appropriately against the present, because I think that's really hard for kids. And I think that is a commonality between quitting. Oh, right now I feel bad about this sport, I want to quit. Oh, this is hard before it gets fun. Like I'm having to learn this new thing and it's taking me time. Or the moment of pulling out the splinter is going to be so bad that it's not worth it to do it, even though I'm miserable. Like all of those are about like a difficulty that is just developmentally the case for kids in like weighing what they're experiencing right then against the future.
Okay, so let's record the intro now.
So what did MILKLESS? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, hey, MILKLESS.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
MILKLESS. Call the audience, MILKLESS. What's up, MILKLESS? Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take.
All right, Matt, today we're talking about something from the MILKLESS mailbag. We don't actually have a mailbag, but we've had two friends, Sam and Jeremy, both hit this topic completely randomly. One, Sam said, hey, what do you think about like keeping your kids gritty? How do you do that where you want to be an empathetic parent, empathetic dad who's really caring about feelings, but then also you don't want to raise kind of a soft kid? Jeremy asked a great question about.
I think Sam's was like he framed it interestingly. He's like, how much hardship do you expose your kid to? Like, what's the right amount of that to like let them just have to deal with?
Right.
Yeah, which I thought was a cool framing.
It was great. And like, we've been thinking about it for a while. And then Jeremy hits us with, what happens when one of your children wants to quit something? Do you let them do it? How do you navigate that? You don't want to be a psycho parent.
After kind of like a single bad experience, like of a sport that he loving a sport, like absolutely loving it. And then like one bad experience. And then it's like, well, you definitely want to validate those feelings, but then how do you help them through that and not be kind of like a psycho sport parent? You will play soccer this season.
No son of mine's not playing soccer. So I'm really excited about getting into this. So how do you want to dive in, Matt? I mean, I could actually lead us off with a little study from 1908 and then throw it over to you if that's
1908. Cool. I like it. We keep it on. We have only the latest information on this show. We're at the cutting edge of the newest research from 1908.
Well, it's a famous experiment, which is why we're going back to 1908. We're going back into the deep MILKLESS archives. Two psychologists, Yerkes and Dodson, in 1908, using mice, they found that stimulation improved performance up to a certain level. So that's called the optimal anxiety. And then later, a different psychologist, Lev Vygotsky, called it the zone of proximal development. But basically, when you are uncomfortable, you actually have increased performance and you learn, but everything is better in this zone. But you get too much stress, performance deteriorates and it's not good. So when you're in your comfort zone, it makes sense. You're safe. You feel great in your comfort zone, but you're not really going to grow because you're kind of doing all the same shit all the time. You get out of your comfort zone, that's when you grow, you learn, things are good, but then it's nice to come back to your comfort zone. If you go too far and it's too unsettling, you no longer can learn. Yeah. It's basically like in Beirut, playing beer pong. The first couple beers make you better. You get any more after that, you're in a downward spiral. You're no longer in the zone of proximal development. Beers
are equal to anxiety and stimulation in this analogy.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's from 1908. The way this therapist I know that I'm married to, the words that she used that are actually like, I think describe something pretty interestingly similar is they call it like the window of tolerance. And she said the complicated thing is that like we always want to be binary. We want it to be simple. And like the window of tolerance is the things that you're comfortable with or the things that your kid's comfortable with. And we want to people either tend to keep them in it or kick them out way too much. And really growth can only happen outside of the window of tolerance or the whatever the proximal zone of development, whatever.
I mean, we are literally sound like we're playing Dungeons and Dragons here. Like window of tolerance plus 5 wisdom. I cast you zone of proximal development.
It's just
anyway.
It's just funny because it's like it's kind of the same idea. But I do believe in that thing that there really isn't growth without some discomfort, but that you have to continuously come back to that place that feels safe and comfortable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like what we're going to be talking about a lot in kind of a lot of different ways. This episode is kind of that dance. One thing that I wanted to ask you in when our buddy Jeremy texted us about this thing, one of the things I asked him is like, do you feel like this is a uniquely felt by as a dad? And he said yes. And I kind of feel that too. I mean, like, I'm always like cautious about generalizing about families because every family looks different and people play different roles in different families. But I do feel like as much as I like have really tried to like learn empathetic parenting or gentle parenting or attachment parenting or whatever the fuck you want to call it, just like being really kind to your kid, I do still feel somewhere in there a responsibility to prepare them for a world that's like not always that nice.
Yeah.
And that feels like a dad, or to like really or on the other side of that, to take her to the edge of her comfort zone, but be there with her to try to make her feel just safe enough. Like, yeah, you can climb this tree. I'll be right there, you know, like, I don't know if that's good or bad, but do you think, do you think it's a little bit of a dad thing in there?
I don't know. I mean, I think I have such a interesting relationship with my partner. Sometimes I take on more of that empathetic, like typically feminine role. My wife is more of the like, you know, tougher one. So I personally, I don't know. I mean, I definitely feel it. So, and I know my wife feels it too, pretty strongly. Mm-hmm. But I think also I think there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in it. And I think that a lot of it has to do with being a dad, but a lot of it just can be either gender. Like, for example, I actually listened to a Dr. Becky podcast on quitting, and she was saying something where somebody was not going to sleepaway camp. And it was like, we wrap it up with so much stuff where we start thinking, oh my gosh, well, I want to make sure that my daughter can like go to college someday. And I need to make sure that she's going to be an independent human being, can earn a wage. Like what if she comes home from sleepaway camp, then and it's like, we wrap up all this stuff into it, and it's like, I think that puts a lot of pressure on it.
I saw a cool thing from that guy, the Daily Stoic dude who does like the Daily Dad stuff. And the way he put it was like, it's dangerous to extrapolate too much. Like you don't want to snowball off the behavior of a 5-year-old to like what their lifelong work ethic would be. Yeah.
But with that said, I do really feel that it is my responsibility to make sure that my kid doesn't grow up soft.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's all I'm saying is like, you're the dad. You feel like they need.
Well, if you have a soft kid, male or female, I mean, society is going to be like, oh, what happened in that childhood there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, here's all I'm saying is I think a lot of the guidance is you always want to validate the feelings, and validate does not mean truth. Okay. It doesn't mean like whatever they're feeling is automatically true and you have to just go with that. With that said, I deal with stuff where our kids don't want to go to certain events that they literally love, like loved karate, basketball, soccer, skiing, mountain biking. Okay. Oftentimes they're doing a really fun thing, and you've said it a bunch, we say it all the time, that transitions are hard. So let's say that they're watching a TV show, playing chess, playing a board game, and it's like, oh guys, we got to cut this short. We got to go. We got basketball. And it's like, oh, I don't want to go. A lot of times they'll get into I hate basketball. And it's like, that's just objectively false.
Yeah.
Basketball is actually one of their favorite things to do of all time. Yeah. It's just the moment. So we don't want to get into the thing where we say, we don't validate that feeling. Say, no, you don't. No, you don't. It's like, I totally hear you, bud. Like, Are you kind of not wanting to go? Yeah, I know that feeling. Because that's a normal feeling. And I think that we just need to establish that olive branch and say, like, look, I want to quit things all the time. That's a very normal thing. When someone cancels plans on me, it's like, oh, it's the best thing ever. I love not going to things, you know? And how many times you wake up for work and it's like, I don't want to go. That's a normal impulse. So it's like totally normal, dude.
Yeah.
But then it's like, just like learning how to read or write or do math, it's a skill to be able to push through some of those feelings and learn how to, for lack of a better term, like suck it up and do the things that you know logically you do love or you do want to do. Yeah. And I think what I'd love to get into with you, Matt, because I think you're better at this nuance than I am, is like, I want to make sure that the kids aren't quitters in the sense that like the rule in our house is like, we don't quit before something. So if you don't want to go to mountain biking camp, well, let's quit tonight or let's quit at the end of the season. But since it's right before, 5 minutes before, sorry, bro.
Yeah.
We're going.
Yeah. Cause there's such a in the moment bias from kids. I mean, it's like, it's sometimes it's right before or like right after, like our friend's son who's played basketball for a long time and it was a good basketball player. He had like a bad game and there was another kid on the court who'd had an early growth sport and he was like, fuck this noise. And I remember doing a similar thing. I remember riding bikes with my dad and my brother and I like didn't really know how traffic worked and I got stuck on a big street. And I was like, I remember getting home and telling my parents, like, I want to sell my bike. I don't ever want to do that again. And they kind of got a little mad at me. And I see why. It's like, what a fucking drama queen. Like, I mean, it's like, settle down. But I really felt that in that moment. I was like, that was so scary or disappointing or whatever. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. But I think like you want to validate that feeling. I would almost go a step further and you want to really try to understand where that feeling comes from. Like, especially if it's something, you know, they like. So like, is it literally just that the show's 2 minutes from over and they don't want to leave to get their socks?
And those ones, screw those ones. There are other ones that happen maybe the morning leading up. And maybe it is a little more valid. Where the TV one, the chess one, screw that noise.
Yeah.
But the one where it's like, it's a couple hours before. Yeah. Anxiety leading up to it. Oh, I don't want to do ski school or I don't want to do mountain biking. And it's like, every time they finish, it's like, how was it? It never once has it been like, that was awful. I hate it, Dad. It's like, that was the best thing ever. I want to be a pro mountain biker when I grow up. So it's objectively awesome, but there is anxiety leading up and that's a very normal feeling for an adult. Yeah. Oh, it's like kind of scary. It's like hard. Sometimes, so it's getting into, I totally get it. Like, tell me about it. And it's like, well, they're faster than me. And like, I sometimes have a hard time keeping up. And it's like, well, like sometimes I'll get into worst case. Like, so what happens? Like if you get dropped, will they wait for you? He's like, well, I don't ever get dropped. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if you did get dropped and you were he's like, oh yeah, we drop kids all the time. And then they just catch up. We stop every 5 minutes. Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, you're allowed to go at your pace and get dropped by the pack and just catch up when you catch up, man. Like sometimes it's just helping them through some of those fears and not being like, you love mountain biking, just do it. Because sometimes it's just a little bit of like reframing. Yeah. Just for the record, I'm not great at this. A lot of times I'll just literally steamroll it. Because I'm like, you love mountain biking. Don't worry about it. Just go. You're going to be fine. You love mountain biking. Yeah. You know, but I think the better thing to do, that thing I could do better is really every time get into the real root of it.
Yeah. Cause a lot of the types of things they want to quit, if it's sports, there's winners and losers and there's people who are better at it than you are. And like, these are not reasons to quit sports, but they are like a relationship. Like, you got to help your kid navigate those feelings. Cause like losing a sports game is fucking hard. It doesn't feel good when you're a kid. I remember like taking that real hard. So I think that a lot of times there's probably a good reason behind it. You know, you were asking me before we started if my oldest daughter struggled with this, and she hasn't struggled with this with like, with going to things like we've never had a hard time like getting her to go to gymnastics camp. It's just so routine. She like goes to school, she comes home, she watches the show while she puts on her clothes, and then she goes, and it's just always kind of been fine. The thing that I struggle with her, and what made me think of it is you were talking about anxiety, is like if she gets a cut or a scrape or a splinter, she kind of panics. And I have this fear that it's like once when she was 2, we kind of like held her while we were putting like hydrogen peroxide on something. And later I read that like, that's like from the 1970s. So I was like, well, I don't know. My mom did it. But
we're going to cauterize the wound.
we gotta seal this off. It's bubbling. That means it's working. It's bubbling.
Bite the spoon.
I mean, my mom would literally say it's bubbling. That means it's working. Like while it just burned. But anyways, what a fucking nightmare. So anyways, but she's got this about shots, and we have done this thing over and over. Will she just be so scared, and she won't let me touch it. And she's like, we can't take a tub. We can't do anything because it might get wet. We can't like it. Nothing can happen until I get a Band-Aid on that thing. I'll be like, baby, just try. Like it's going to stop hurting as soon as I do this thing, or like pull out this. We have cactuses all
like
over
a
the
splinter.
property. Yeah. We have a lot of cactuses. So like that happens. And I got to go get the tweezers and the headlamp. But then a lot of times she just can't. And it triggers this shitty thing in me where I want to just be like, pull yourself together. It's the second you let me do this, it will not hurt and it will be gone. Yeah. And so many times I've done it and then I pull it and she's always like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, it's fine now, isn't it? And I've even said to her, like, try to remember this. You remember how scared you were a second ago and how okay it feels now? And then we're right back there. And the problem is that her being anxious in that irrational way makes me react badly. So I can't help her deal with the anxiety, you know? And we're just like fucking stuck in it.
Yeah. I mean, that was always very hard for us when the kids were, between 1 and 3 for sure. But ours kind of grew out of it a little bit where they don't want us to take out a splinter. They'll be like, no, don't do it. And usually there's some cajoling to happen. Mm-hmm. But it's like the type of thing where this is one of those perfect examples where you have to validate those feelings, but those feelings are wrong. We got to get that. We got to get that thing out.
They don't,
you know what I mean? Like it can't be like, well, all your feelings are valid. So we're going to leave that foreign object in your, like, what's the alternative? You have to get it out. So it's really like empathizing. I totally get it. Like that's a very normal feeling. That's so normal. And then it's like, I don't know, you just got to pull out all the tricks to try to do it. But it's like, those are the types of things where it's like, you just like, I think there is a thing about being tough. Like the example I use is like, I know you love it, Chase from Paw Patrol movie. Like when he was scared, and he did that jump, which was not physically possible.
Why do they all have to be superheroes?
To save Ryder?
The jump was insane.
No, the jump was
made no sense.
It didn't even like had no arc.
Yeah,
it's like he had a jetpack on.
Yeah,
but anyway, I use that all the time. Like he says, he's like, I can do it. Like or whatever he says. Like I can do it. I can do it. Like I think there's a huge thing about teaching kids to be brave when they're scared. Not to divulge anything, but there's a book that you're writing that MILKLESS Media might put out. And what's the line about, Dado says scared plus...
It's Dado says scared plus tough equals brave, which means you can't even be brave unless you're scared first.
Right. So I think like that's something is like teaching the kids about bravery is important.
Yeah. I think it is. Yeah.
And we say, oh, remember Moana was brave. And, and then afterward you celebrate that bravery, and you do not shame any other thing. Like I remember one time we had to kind of hold the foot down of like a 1.5-year-old, a 2-year-old to get the splinter out. But it was one of those, it just came out real quick and boom.
Yeah.
But then there was no like, could have been easier, bro.
Yeah. You did it. See? I did once. We went to get a shot and my daughter just panicked and she just like couldn't, she was like moving her arm around. She wouldn't. And the nurse she had a bad vibe, and you could tell she was impatient. And then the nurse looked at me and she was like, "You're going to have to hold her still." And I was like, "We're leaving."
Hey.
I was like, I'm not doing that. And we just left. But it sucked. I was so fucking
And that's
mad.
how Matt became an anti-vaxxer.
Look, man. No, Jesus Christ.
I'm kidding. You need one of those doctors who's like, they go viral and they like are all fun, have great bedside manner. Beep. Yeah. And it's like, bing.
Yeah. Yeah. We probably need a good experience. Yeah. Yeah. But so I agree with you about the bravery thing. And probably one thing I can do, whenever with the like cuts or scrapes, whenever I've put the Band-Aid on or pulled the whatever out and it was instantly fine, what I've always focused on is see how fine it is now right away, kind of the logic of it.
Yeah. See what happens, Larry?
Do you see what happens? Because I think that's what's so infuriating about it is how self-defeating the behavior is. It's like you are weeping right now, and literally the thing that I need to do to fix everything will take this long and not even be painful.
Well, I have another little trick. It's the same trick from the daycare drop-off that could work with shots, because we have our 8-year-old is borderline sociopathic in what he said. He's obviously trolling, but he's been saying for the last 3 years that he loves shots. And the only thing he loves more than shots is getting a corona test up his nose, touching his brain. Because our 2 other kids hate it so much. He actually says he loves it. Loves corona tests.
My favorite Big Brother flex ever. He's just like, I fucking wake up.
Getting a deep corona test, because we lived in Amsterdam, coming back and forth. Yeah. Getting a deep corona test, like basically Egyptian brain hooking. And like, he's just loving it. He's like, yeah, eyes watering. He's like, yeah, love it.
Yeah.
The only thing I love more than getting a shot is a corona test. But anyway, so we have that weird dynamic. But then the way I got the 6-year-old he was similar to your daughter, like really, really afraid of shots, like super afraid, like crying the whole morning before going.
Yeah.
Is just kind of being like, yeah, you want to like do a practice run? Because sometimes it's just the whole thought of the needle is so scary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you want me to give you a little pinch? Show you what it's like? And I'll give him a tiny little pinch. Because, pinches, like if you pinch someone's arm or leg, it only hurts for like 1 second. It's just like a thing. So, and then I'm like, okay, here it comes. And I try to make a big deal and I do it. And then they're like, oh, that's it? Yeah. Oh, you want me to do it again? Yeah. Bing. And like, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna hurt really bad. Ready? Bing.
And that's when you sock him. That's when you sucker punch him.
Spinning back fist. And
oh man. Yeah, that's interesting. As you're the way something clicked when you were like it's scary, the idea of the needle going in. It is, because even like when I get a shot or get blood drawn, I don't look at it.
No, I can't. I don't look either.
So
actually, I do look on the blood drawn because I think that's really interesting. I don't look at shots though.
I'll look at it once it's going, but I don't want to look at it happening. But anyways,
actually, I probably don't look either.
Point being that it gets back to like what I think what I've been fucking up is I've been trying to talk her out of it being a big deal rather than trying to talk to her about why it's a big deal to her. Because I've just been like, it's over that quick. There's no pain. Like it'll be over soon. And probably what she's dealing with is like, there's something going to go in and out of my body. And like, nobody really feels comfortable with that. And for a kid, that's hard to overcome because the long-term benefits of whatever that thing, especially with a shot, it's like, they don't feel it's like, you're safe now. And they're like, yeah, I'll really appreciate that as a 6-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that because I went through this exact thing with our 6-year-old about the shots is like, and this is kind of the whole central point of a lot of what we're talking about on this episode is you want them to be able to do what you and I do and get a shot and just not look at it.
Yeah.
I don't love getting shots.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're drawing blood today. How many vials? 3. It's like, okie dokie. I'm not pumped about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, I go through the motions. I pump my fist. It's like, do it. Yep. Yeah. Sick.
Do it fast. Great. Go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and get it. Yeah, let's go ahead and get it done.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, so I think saying like, yeah, I don't really like getting shots either. It's totally normal. It's a totally normal feeling, but it's something we have to do because, and then, you explain the reasons to stay healthy and, and then it's like same thing we had to get corona tests all the time going back and forth, and they made the kids do it too.
Yeah.
Like deep. And it was just like something we just got to do. And like we talked about how to be brave. And like, I use some of the mechanisms that I do. Like, how do I get through it? I just don't look. And then here's what it feels like. It's just a little pinch. Sometimes is,
what has worked for my daughter for some more minor things, like medicine that tastes really bad is, cause what I've always done with that stuff is I always just want to like go fast. Like when I pitched in baseball, I took like no time between pitches. The one time I went paragliding, I was like, I would like to go first. And then we didn't get to choose the order. I went last. And I was like, this is why I go first. So my technique has always been, and I said this to my daughter one time because she couldn't get herself to take this nasty tasting medicine. And I was like, just pretend you're a ninja and don't care and just do it right away. And and I was like, and I was basically like, look at me in the eyes and don't even like care. Just don't care. And she fucking gave me the most gangster ass shot of that thing. And sometimes that has worked. And I think ultimately I'm trying to train her in my technique. Like that's how I talk myself up. It's like, I don't fucking care. I'll do this. Like, can we go and get it over with?
I don't know. There's something interesting there. This is a quick little sidebar. I got a cold plunge thing just to fuck around with. I used it literally like every day for 2 weeks and haven't touched it in 6 months. But anyway, when I was doing it, our 6-year-old was like, can I try it? And the 8-year-old was like, that's way too cold. Like there was tons of ice cubes in it. And they both did it for like 10 seconds. And then it became a pissing contest. And then they both done it for like 10 seconds each. And then the 6-year-old just gets in and he's like, I'm not getting out. And he stayed up till his neck. And he starts like, he did it for 5 minutes. I'm like, that's enough. You're getting out. And then the next guy gets in, the 8-year-old. And then they both did it for 5 minutes where for a few days they could only do it for 10 seconds. And that was a great opportunity to kind of explain like the ninja thing that like sometimes you think that you have to get out of something, but like sometimes it's just your mind.
Yeah.
And your mind is the most powerful thing in the world.
Yeah.
We're getting a little off topic, but there's something in there.
That sometimes you got more in yourself than you realize, and that you don't really know that you got it until you have to have it. There's you remember that movie 3 Kings with fucking, it's a weird movie to be such a good
Wahlberg.
movie.
Yeah.
Ice Cube, Wahlberg, Clooney.
We watched it together in college.
Yeah, like 9 times. Yeah.
But
there's a line that George Clooney has because he plays like a badass and they're going to steal some money and there's some guys that don't have any combat experience and they're kind of scared.
Yeah.
And the line is, he's like, the way it works is you do the thing you're scared of and then you get the courage to do it after. And the guy he's talking to is like, that's a fucked up way for things to work. And he's just like, yeah. And I do kind of think that it's like, that gets back to that, like you only grow when you exit that window of tolerance a little bit. And I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if this like, it's weird how all of this stuff, like I'm trying to think of like, how does like staying in a sport relate to taking a shot but I think like what it comes down to is that desire, like you're trying to give your kids some grit, but, and some courage, but not expect, but understand, really try to understand when they're struggling with those things, why they're struggling and be a part of helping them with the thing that's hard for them rather than trying to convince them that they can do the thing.
Yeah, 100%. And like in terms of the quitting, I talked with my friend Danny about this. He's trying to start something for basically it's called Sport for Growth. And it's about how sports can really help kids. We talked about it for a little bit, the quitting of sports. And it's like, what we kind of came up with was like, the kids need to kind of participate in the problem solving. Like if they don't want to do something, it's our job not to either convince them one way or another. It's more our job to help them develop the tools to think about it. Because sometimes you actually do need to know when to fold them. And you need to know when to hold them. Like, for example, like being stuck in a dead end job with a fucking toxic manager. It's like, well, my daddy taught me to stick it out. It's like, no, you need to quit that job. That is a toxic manager that is verbally abusing you every day. You know, that's different, you know? So it's nuance. It's not, we don't quit in this family. It's, let's talk about this. Let's actually develop some pathways of how we parse this data. Like, interesting.
And interestingly, like, actually, part of the idea of being a kid, and this probably gets truer and truer the older you get, is to try a lot of shit. And so you probably should be quitting an awful lot of things. Like, oh, I played like baseball for a season and I just don't like it. It doesn't, like, it's not my skill set, but I'm really into this. And so you're right. I mean, like, we always want it to be one thing or the other. Like, never quit. Like,
quitting can be amazing. I quit. Like, you love baseball. I loved baseball. It was like, literally, I like in the movies, I'd pick up the dirt. I played shortstop. I'd like smell it.
You're romantic. Like, it's a romantic game.
I loved it. But then in freshman year of high school, like, it just went on too long. I remember in 8th grade, I played in so many different leagues. I felt like it went from whenever baseball starts, April or something? Or something like that.
Yeah.
It went till the end of the summer. So then it's like, I remember hating baseball by the end of the summer in like 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And then at the end of that season, I was just like, I'm switching to tennis. Yeah. And I joined the tennis team, got to number 1 in the town, and was playing singles. Like, the only way I would have been able to become a tennis player that could possibly hang with you or spank you is.
Oh no, I believe we played in college once.
Did you smoke me?
Well, yeah.
Was I? Okay. But I was probably pretty good.
You were like, look, you were good. You really seemed like the best kid in a small town.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. You went to a big city. But anyway,
sorry,
I would have been able to play with you. No, please do. I would not have been able to play with you had I not quit. Yeah. Baseball.
Yeah.
And you know, like,
you got,
sometimes when you close one door, limited. You open others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you can't, never quit is a dumb thing to teach. I think it's like, what ultimately you're trying to teach is like to value, I don't know. It's like, how do you teach person when the right time to quit and not to quit is? It's like, but I mean, part of what you're teaching them, I think a big part of what you're teaching them is to weigh the future more appropriately against the present. Cause I think that's really hard for kids. And I think that is a commonality between quitting. Oh, right now I feel bad about this sport. I want to quit. Oh, this is hard before it gets fun. Like, I'm having to learn this new thing and it's taking me time. Or like, the moment of pulling out the splinter is going to be so bad that it's not worth it to do it, even though I'm miserable. Like, all of those are about like a difficulty that is just developmentally the case for kids in like weighing what they're experiencing right then against the future.
Right.
And so that seems like a part of like one of your biggest roles is to help them with that.
Yeah, 100%. And I just want to caveat it, and then I want to hit that again, this only works if the sport or activity or thing that they should not be quitting is not with some like toxic, abusive, weird coach or whatever, like screaming at them or something. Yeah. So anyway, that's obviously the prerequisite for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that is the goal, is like helping them work through. They're going to be hitting a lot of adversity in life. It's like figuring out when to actually leave it and think about the future. Like, I remember when we had a similar thing to Jeremy. Like, one of our kids was like, they got smoked in the first game of the year, and I'm the coach, and all the kids were all upset. And I try to do a good job of really focusing on effort and not outcomes. Mm-hmm. I don't even care about the score. I'm always like, oh, that play you did when you dove, you're insane. Yeah. It's all about effort.
What was the score? Do you remember?
They smoked us like 25-0. And they were all upset. But then, so we got really into it that like my son like maybe wanted to quit. So I talked to him about I painted that thread, not to scare him, but I'm like, okay, cool, you quit basketball. Then probably next year, like you can play basketball. Let's say you quit next year too. It's the type of thing that with a sport like that, especially at your age, like you want to keep it going. There's a lot of people, and I referenced some people I knew from my childhood who were very athletic, quit a sport too young, just because maybe they were feeling a certain way in a certain time, and then could never catch back up. And then, you all have those friends who maybe quit a sport a little too young, and then it's like they can never really pick that back up. It's like you can like play basketball and walk on a high school team if you haven't played in 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just kind of like, so just to keep that optionality open, like if you're really dead set on quitting, then we can quit, but then it's pretty much closing that door for you, as opposed to like, let's talk about what's really down there. Like what's really upsetting you? Well, we hate that we lost, like blah, blah, blah. And all we worked on the next practice was 100% jukes, nothing but jukes and running layups. 4 games later, they played that team again, beat them by like 1 point.
Fuck yeah.
Like,
dude, that's
it was
heroic.
like a movie.
Yeah, that's a movie.
Yeah.
Man.
And it was like,
God damn, I bet you lost your fucking mind. Were you just screaming?
Well, they're like, we won. I'm like, I don't keep score. Like, we did.
Yeah, you focus on process, not outcomes, right?
Yeah, right. But honestly, it's like, just like talking about like, if you leave this, there's not,
like how do you
closing that door? Yeah,
how do you frame it to them? Yeah, because you never like want to threaten them or be like, you're making a decision for the rest of your life. But there is a truth to like is basketball something you think you're gonna want to try to like keep playing as you get older and older? That like it just gets a little harder to stop and start. Yeah, just really trying to give them the information.
Just explaining, because I've definitely heard like, I just want to quit this year. Yeah. I'll play again next year. Yeah, that's hard to do. I mean, it's doable. Yeah. You can. But you were upset this year because you weren't as good as that team. You know what that team's going to be doing all year? Yeah. Getting way better.
Yeah. And I don't care about outcomes, but you're not going to like what happens.
But it's going to be even more painful next year. So.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, which is the truth.
In the gym, kid.
Yeah, get yourself to the fucking gym. The one thing that I, and probably prematurely worry about a little bit with my 6-year-old is like, she's super active and seems to be pretty athletic, but she hasn't really showed any interest in any sports that involve rules. I just wanted to make sure that I never push my kids to do something that genuinely isn't suited to them. And I worry about the most if it's something that they're good at, because I think that can happen, that kids can be good at things that they don't like. And those are the hardest times to not fuck that up.
Right. With that said, like in our episode on planning, where we kind of, had differing opinions and stuff, like your daughter's still young and I'm on the same page as you. Like, as long as you're working on general athleticism, she's getting her yayas out, running around. She knows how to throw a rock. Like kicking a ball is actually kind of a unique-ish skill. She can kick a ball like up against the garage. It opens doors. And like, I think good, like things to experiment with are like soccer. If she can kick, it teaches a lot of like field awareness, juking, getting open. It's like a big game of tag almost. But it can also be really annoying if like I coach soccer too. It's like if the kids aren't into it, like it's just, it can be annoying for the kids, for the parents. So I think your instinct is right, but the good gateway drugs would be like basketball. Yeah. Like soccer. I mean, sometimes they have like t-ball. Yeah. And some of those can be fun because then it's like their thing. You get a uniform. Yeah. And then like you watch them and stuff. Yeah. So it's like.
And I was thinking about this, like both you and I played sports all the way through school. And I think we both, I know it was incredibly important to you, but it was also important to me. Like it was a big part of my life. So I am conscious that I have like a bias toward the value of that. And like, there's some kids that like, it's not fun because like their hand-eye just like isn't quite there or whatever. And I definitely have like, I have friends who are athletic too, who like, I worry because they're like, my son's just not like, he just ain't got it. And I see that like, that's a little hard for them. But I think that there's something. I think the reason that I still believe in it, even if it's not sports, is I think like it's really important for kids to like feel like they're in their bodies and that their bodies are capable of doing stuff. I think that's important for adults too. And I think like we live in a world where we don't like, we're just like often disembodied. Like if you're on a computer, you're not really in your body. And so I think that like whatever form it is, encouraging your kids to be active is just like, it's just good. You just feel better. You feel better when you're in your body.
Yeah. And it's like, even if it's not going to sports, it's like, just go outside and play. And if you can go outside with them and just kick a ball back and forth. Yeah. Or throw a tennis ball against a wall. Yeah. Like those sorts of things. It's the type of thing where I don't want to. Yeah. Like our kids always say like, they don't want to. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then they go outside and they will not come in for dinner.
Yeah. It's just the transition, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this stuff is so interesting to me. We know some folks whose daughter was getting bullied at school, and a kid shoved her or hit her or something. And I think she shoved her back. And her mom was like super uncomfortable with that. And her dad was like, yep. And I do like... there's just this part of me that, I don't know, it's weird. It feels like, and maybe I'm harping on this too much, but like, I do sometimes think of like, what is specific to being a dad? And is it even worth talking in those terms? Or is every marriage so different that like, but I do think it's like, you look at a mother and you're like, clearly there are some things that are unique to a mother, right? I mean, that's obvious. And some of that's physical, but some of it ain't. Yeah. And like, what are those things for a dad? And I do feel like for me personally, that like threading that needle between comfort and discomfort, between building toughness and grit and versus feeling like safe and taken care of. And like, I feel like that's a big part of my job, but I think that sometimes my instincts for how to create toughness are wrong because they're not grounded in like, they're grounded too much in making the thing feel like it shouldn't be that hard to do or that it's easy to do. Yeah. And they're not, they're not enough about like making my kid feel so thoroughly supported that they can fucking do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. I think that would probably be a better tactic, but I think I would also say, you know, you're being a little hard on yourself. I'd say like coming from your perspective, you are such an empathetic, like money dad. And I think that as long as you are like that, whatever that stat was that like, oh, you can have rupture and repair as long as you're doing that 30% of the time, like you're good, you know, like I think, look, we're talking about ideals here. And I think that, yeah, the ideal is like really leaning into understanding their feelings. Sometimes, like you say, we don't have like maximum amount of time here. Yeah. Yeah. There's that. I think as long as the child is not in the extreme anxiety zone where they're having like PTSD or trauma or like there's like a serious bully action where they really don't want to go to school and it's like traumatic for them, I'd say like we're just talking about ideal tactics. And I think, yeah, maybe you can do it a little better, but I think you're close to nailing it. So it's like, look, as long as sometimes it's just like, sometimes I actually just put the foot down and try to stay as calm as possible. And I'm like, this is happening. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I sneak that in just to let them know, like, look, like, just so you know, I'm going to be the most empathetic motherfucker you've ever been with here. And I'm going to like listen to you and validate your feelings. And I'm going to say like, I totally get it, bud. But then I'll just keep sneaking in like, but like, it's fucking happening, bro. I don't say fucking, but I'm like, but this is happening. So we got to I'm going to be here with you.
Around that, bro. This shit is fucking happening.
Get your mind right, son. Like I'll literally be like, no, like we have about 5 minutes and then whatever X, Y, and Z is happening. So like you have a choice right now to like, I'm going to help you through it but that's happening, man.
Yeah.
Just to let them know, like,
Yeah.
that it's going to happen. Because some things, if I know that it's not going to be the traumatic anxiety thing, it's like, look, this is going to be a little uncomfortable.
There's also this thing too, where it's like, if you can, man, I was listening to this podcast with this dude whose wife, this is a long way around, but his wife was Bosnian, and she had lived through the, like, you remember the whole like Slobodan Milosevic? That was like early childhood. There's like a horrific situation over there. And so they were asking him about COVID lockdowns. And he was like, it's so easy for her because she like lived in lockdown for years in Bosnia. And what she always said was, it is amazing what you are capable of when you have no choice. So I do think that sometimes if you can present it like, this has to happen, this one just has to happen. So whatever, like that there is, that even as a kid, they understand like, well, if it has to happen, then what we're trying to do is figure out how it can happen. And if you can just kind of present it as the facts and calmly and not a threat, like that that is useful to say, like, this one's got to happen.
And those are the ones that, like, look, we're going to school right now. And it's like, I validate your feelings that like, you don't want to go because you're worried about something you have to do, or you fell in front of the class and got a bloody nose and you're embarrassed and you don't want to go. But it's like, you're going. The other one is like how to get they themselves to, like, if all signs are pointing to this being one of their favorite things to do, but maybe there's something that happened last week and they don't want to go. That's the harder one.
But usually you got a little more time for that one too. Like especially if it happens like after, like, and I think some of that too is just like, say kids had a really rough game or whatever, or like the time that the traffic thing with my bike, it was just like basically the same thing. It was just a bad, scary experience. And I didn't want to, and, I think it's like, you don't need to talk about it that night. You might not need to talk about it the next day. It's like the further you are from that bad experience, probably the better chance you're going to, the more your kid's going to be able to not weigh it so heavily against the future, So just giving them some time to get their head around it. I think the other thing is like, so the work my wife does, they work with horses. And one of the things they have to do is like form a relationship with the horse they don't know, like people do, because it's kind of like a test drive for a relationship with people in some ways. And horses are prey animals, so they respond to like pressure. They see us as predators, even if they're pretty comfortable. But it's an interesting dynamic because they're also way bigger than we are and could totally kick our ass. But so one of the things that they talk about is like, to make a request of a horse, you often do with your body, you apply pressure to the horse. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But even if you orient yourself at the back of a horse, it'll turn toward you, because like predators go at the flanks. And there's some people that look at the work that they do and they're like, you're scaring the horse. And their response is always like, you have to be able to make requests and apply some pressure in every relationship. And I think that like, it's uncomfortable to apply pressure to your kids for something that is maybe hard for them, but you're not making a mistake. And you got to really modulate that pressure. And that's the thing that's like an inexact science, right? But I guess the idea that like, it's not like you're not allowed to nudge them toward the thing that you think is hard, but worth it. Because I have a friend that says it all the time. He says, nothing worth it is easy. And I remember he recommended a book to me. I was like, it's not on Kindle. And he's like, nothing worth it is easy. Fuck you, buddy. But you kind of got to teach him that. Yeah.
And there's nothing better than doing the hard thing and having the payoff after.
Yeah.
Nothing better.
Yeah.
Nothing better.
But I think like that the greatest toughness you can get is a belief in themselves. And they're going to learn that from your belief in them. Like ultimately the greatest source of toughness is believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And so I do want my daughter to be tough, but I think like when I hear that word, I think there's a lot of versions of that are like,
A little toxic.
who's that ultra marathoner guy?
Oh yeah, David Goggins.
David Goggins.
Yeah.
That YouTube's always like, you sometimes watch old boxing highlights. You like this guy.
Yeah.
And he's just like, beat the weakness out of yourself, motherfucker. You're fat. And it's just like, Jesus, this guy seems awful. Like that's just, I don't think that's the road to there. I think kids that like feel really solid in themselves and in the relationships in their life, those are the tough kids that are more willing to take risks because they think they can do it.
Yeah. No, that guy just like obviously would like win any debate or any like if he's allowed to scream at you and look the way he does. So yeah, it's like, how do you count? He'd just be like, this guy's a weakling for even talking against me, you know? So it's like, yeah. I don't love that guy.
But I guess the idea that toughness is like a rejection or a suppression of some feelings that you're having. You know what I mean? That the way to be tough is to just like shove it down, fucking do it anyways.
Right.
Because I think that,
to me, toughness is, and what we're talking about, like this grit, is when you have the two parts of your brain, maybe the emotional side and the logical side, and the logical side of your brain wants to do something, but the emotional sort of can't. It's learning how to push through and do the things you know you want to do. Get up for work, make it to work. Like you wake up, emotional is like, I'm tired, go back to bed, shirk all responsibilities. It's like, no, logical is like, nope, I'll help you get through that.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a great skill to have, is like, oh, right before basketball, 7-year-old's like, I don't want to go. Helping them through that thought process. That's a totally normal feeling. Yeah. I don't want to do anything when I think about things too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, don't you love basketball? Yeah, I kind of do. Like, don't you love this feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, so we kind of have the other side of the brain where it's like, okay, I'm going, even though I don't really feel it.
Yeah.
Because I know that it's going to be sick. It's the same thing with like working out. I hate working out, but who in the history of working out has ever, after working out, said, God damn it, I wish I didn't do that?
I know. Yeah. Yeah. But it's just the moment right before it. Yeah. I've been doing it in my garage, man. I put on movies and I can watch movies out there, and I do it at night. And the movies make it just tolerable enough that 70% of nights I can get myself to go. But you're right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny and kind of like emblematic of how you and I are, that's like, that is the logical part of your brain to train, the like weighing the now versus the later. And then like I come at it from like, and just like feel like a person who's capable of achieving things, you know what I mean? And they're both right. And then I think there's also the obvious, just like help them make the connection between working at something and then getting better at it. But some of that they do, like my daughter just decided she wanted to do cartwheels, and she's worked at it and worked at it and worked at it. And then she could do cartwheels, and we never had to push a fucking thing. It was, and like, I don't care about cartwheels, but like she does. And that's, you know what I mean? She did that when her little school, that part of what they have to like at the end of the year, they all have to do something for like the whole class and the parents, like starting from when they're young. And she just got up there and did a couple of cartwheels.
It's pretty awesome.
It's cool. One thing I think about it is our world is kind of cushy, you know, like our kids aren't naturally necessarily exposed to a lot of hardship. So how do we expose them to it without like artificially creating it, or with creating it by like removing our own support from them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think it's like, I think it's what you do is you find moments where they really want to put their foot down, and you know it's like the wrong decision for them because you know them, that this is something that they love. And I'm just going to use the same example we've been talking about. like if your child does not want to go to basketball and they love basketball and they're talking about it all morning because of whatever sort of anxiety leading up, and you know that it's not going to step into trauma, you're going to get this kid to do it. Like, I think the way I think about it, honestly, is like the end point is where they need to get. That's going to the basketball thing. It can't just be go there. They've never been there. They don't have the GPS. The way I kind of view it is like, I'm going to almost co-pilot with them. Mm-hmm. And, look, end goal, what do we want to achieve here? I want them to make a decision to go to basketball on their own. So I'm going to show them the GPS. How would I think about it? Yeah, I know, man. I don't want to go to basketball sometimes. Like when I have it, it's like, yeah, seems like a lot of work. It's kind of far away. I'd rather watch TV. Yeah, let's cancel. Let's skip. Oh, it feels so good to skip. I hope they cancel. I hope we get a snow day and cancel. Right. Common ground. Then it's like, now let's navigate. But you know that feeling when you make a good shot? Ah, you love that. You know that feeling afterward and you're so hungry after? Yeah, that's amazing. You know when you like are hugging with your buddies during the game? Yeah. And why did you sign up for basketball in the first place? Yeah. These are all the things that like we go through probably in an instant when we decide to go to work every day. Yeah. When we decide to go to school, do all these things that we know we want to do. Yeah. But human nature is like, we like quick dopamine hits. Yeah. I want to just like not go to work and watch Netflix all day and eat like shit. Yeah. Everybody has that quick impulse. Yeah. But let's show the kids the GPS on how to make that choice themselves, as opposed to just being like, you love basketball, you're going, which I say all the time. I'm not a saint here. I'm just saying when I do it right, we're co-piloting it together, and let's figure this out. Yeah. I think we're going to figure out why we're going to want to go. I do think that like the step I might add, I agree. Yeah. It's cool. The idea of like co-piloting them, because you're just kind of like, you're figuring it out alongside them. I think that like one important part of that is really at the beginning of that conversation, kind of when you're like empathizing and finding the common ground. I think the best way to find that common ground is not necessarily to say like, I feel that sometimes. It's to try to help them articulate why they feel that way. You know what I mean? Like let them kind of lead that. Cause like, I do think ultimately you want to really enter that conversation by trying to understand, and you probably know, right? But like, like having them say it, is I think, and then kind of like playing that out, like, okay. Yeah, more of a Socratic method on it. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Yeah. Like, what are you what are you feeling that's making you not want to go? Because I know like when we're there, we're always having a good time. So like, or just like, what are your favorite parts about basketball? I mean, I think probably we both suffer from this. I have a tendency to, because they do it in movies, man, you can fix it with the speech, right? If you give the right speech, then they'll just, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to go have sex with my wife. What's that from? Now I feel like it's a Chappelle Show thing. I don't know that. But yeah, like, like Coach from Friday Night Lights or whoever. Yeah. Pick your archetype. But I think that like with my daughter, what I'm finding is like, sometimes I give a speech that I think is real good. And she's like, Dad, that's not what I'm saying. And I'm like, okay, all right. And like, really what I need to do is like, let her listen more. Yeah. 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 No, those are great points. Yeah. But, and I guess that's what I keep coming back to, and probably I'm nailing on the head too much. It's just like all these things about toughness. I almost think maybe it's possible that toughness is a byproduct of a lot of other things, like an ability to weigh the present against the future. It's a belief in yourself, an understanding of like what is acceptable to happen to you and what is not acceptable to happen to you, because that tells you when you should quit. Like I think the reason I keep hitting it is I think sometimes we try to toughen up kids by us being hard on them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And really what it is like putting them in a situation that is a little hard for them, but then we're not the hard part. You're the support.